Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our third External Outreach Podcast episode. This month, we will be covering professional communication tips as well as general interview tips, and then interviewing with a chemical engineering student at UC. So starting off with our first topic of email etiquette, there are a variety of things that you should be doing when you are talking to your teachers or professors. The first being, make sure to address them as doctor or professor, depending on their status. Not every one of your professors is going to be a doctor. Some of them might be just like PhD or grad students, so make sure to check before you email them. It's always safe to use professor. Additionally, once you start your body, start with a "Hi, my name is," and then fill in your name, and say what class you're in and what section. This just gives the teacher some information about who you are before they get into the actual meat of your email. When you're actually writing the email, try to only have about 2 to 3 sentences of content. Professors have a lot going on. They get like 100 emails a day. The faster you can get the information across to them, the more likely they are to respond to you in a time-efficient manner. Next, say that you enjoy their class or something positive about it. These professors obviously really enjoy their class content. That's why they teach it. So saying that you enjoy it as well, or what little part that you're learning about currently you enjoy, they will greatly appreciate hearing that. Finally, create a signature for yourself. Make sure to include your full name, your graduation year, and any clubs that you're in, as that will get some recognition for your clubs. And then our final tip for email etiquette is to, in your title, have the name of the class and then a general overview about what your question is about. So if it's a question about exam 1, put exam 1. If it's a question about a specific homework, say that homework and maybe even that problem number.
So next I'm going to share some general interview tips that can be helpful in preparing for and during an interview with a possible employer. So since these tips are general, they can be helpful for high school students who may be looking for summer part-time jobs, but they can also be helpful for college students when they're interviewing for co-ops in the future. So the first tip I have to prepare for an interview is to Google some common interview questions. So for example, if you're interviewing for an engineering co-op, if you Google something like common engineering interview questions, some great resources will come up. And being familiar with these types of questions and preparing how you could answer them will help get you in the right mindset. Kind of think about some different situations and experiences you've had and how you can explain these experiences in the best way possible. So when I prepare in this way, I usually write down my ideas and even sentences for responses to these questions. And then I'll think about them, and then right before the interview, I'll read through them just so I get in the right mindset. And this helps me feel prepared, but everybody has their own unique way of doing so. In a few days ahead of time, I'll also practice responding to these questions out loud to either myself or family and friends. Sometimes saying things out loud sounds different than how you're saying it in your head, so saying things out loud will help you feel more comfortable during the interview. Another tip I have is to prepare and to be knowledgeable about the job you're interviewing for. So doing some research on the company and what they do, especially if it's for a co-op, is very important. And thinking about and preparing a few questions you may want to ask will also be helpful. Having 1 or 2 questions will really show the employer you're serious about the job and that you're engaged in the interview. Being familiar with what's on your resume is also important, because if they ask you something about a past job or volunteer experience, you want to be able to explain and elaborate on the experience, not just what's already written on the resume. And then during the interview, I'd say to always dress professionally. Being overdressed is better than being underdressed, and being dressed up will help boost your confidence. And then with this, I also say to make sure your hair is done in a way that you won't have to keep fixing it. Sometimes when you're messing with like your clothes, your hair, it can be distracting to the interviewer. And if they're distracted, they may miss something that you said, and it might be something important. And during the interview, it's important to be confident, make eye contact, and to be yourself. So the employers want to know who you are and how you interact with people during the job. So they don't want to just know everything that's on your resume. And it's also a good idea to bring some sort of portfolio or nice folder to the interview with you. Having paper and pens, and the questions you may want to ask, somewhere to put paperwork the employers may give you, and somewhere to have your resumes where they won't get folded or crumpled is really important. In a few minutes, Callie will explain some resume tips, but it's important to bring several copies of your resume with you to any type of interview you have. And then the last tip I have is to make sure you have someone's contact information to send a thank you and follow-up to. If you're at an interview, you'll most likely already have somebody's contact information, but if there's other people there, it would be nice to get theirs as well.
All right, so now we're going to give you guys just some general resume tips. So even when you're in high school, it's a good idea to have a resume. A lot of scholarships will require resumes, and it's really good to have all of your accomplishments and your job experience and work experience all in one place. So one tip that really worked well for me was in high school, my mom and I started a list of all of the different activities I was involved with, how long I had been involved with them, and any different like awards I had received, any recognition, any job experience. So if you kind of break that down by like your freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, it's going to become a really valuable tool to you when you're applying to colleges and when you begin to write your resume. So another thing you can do is if you don't have a lot of job experience, which is perfectly fine, as when I came in as a freshman, I had never really worked before, but you can put down clubs, different activities you're involved in. If you were an athlete or if you were in band or any other extracurricular, that's really good experience. Companies are just looking to make sure that you're well-rounded and you have a lot of the soft skills that they're looking for. You also can put your volunteer experience. Once again, they love to see that you're well-rounded, that you're involved in different things. So another thing is when you get a job, like if you get a co-op or you get an internship, make sure to write down the day you started and then write down the location of your job, write down the name of your supervisor and a contact number or contact email. And then if or when you finish the job, make sure to put down the end date. Whenever you're editing your resume with your new job on there, it's always important to have these two things. They're always going to ask for it, and whenever you go to apply for a new job, they're always going to want to know your previous work experience. So again, it's good to put that on your list of achievements and your experiences. So when you're actually writing your resume, make sure to be concise and use action verbs to describe things. You don't want to make your sentences really long. You want to be nice and quick to the point. Make sure you tell them what you did, what you brought to the company, but don't make it too long. Another thing you want to do is you want to put your leadership and your work experience at the top of your resume. It depends on which one you put first. So, especially if you're younger and you're starting out, I would recommend to put your leadership experience first if you have more leadership experience. But if you have more work experience, feel free to put that first. You want the top of your resume to be the attention grabber, and it wants to make them keep reading. So another thing to think about, especially if you're doing engineering, is to start thinking about technical skills. A lot of employers really like to see technical skills on your resume. It's okay if you don't have any now, it's no big deal. But once you get to college, you're going to be learning a lot of different things. So make sure to keep a running list of like programming languages different softwares you've used. Really popular one is SolidWorks or Autodesk Inventor. If you know Microsoft Office, all of those different things are really good technical skills to have. And if you don't have any, or if you don't have a lot of technical skills, you can kind of fill in a skills list with some soft skills like teamwork, communication, project management. But as you gain these technical skills, try to phase those out. And one last thing for resumes, you want to make sure, if possible, that your resume is one page. Companies don't want to have to be flipping back and forth between the front and back or the first and second page. So there's a lot of different ways you can doctor it up. You can change the font size, you can change the margins, and you can add like a header and a footer. But just make sure that there's not too much information and that it's still concise and easy to read. And always make sure to have your availability on your resume when you're able to work. And at the top, make sure to have your updated address, your contact information, and anything else. All right, guys, so today we are here with Taylor, who's a third year studying chemical engineering, and she's just going to give you a quick overview about what chemical engineering is.
Hello. So, like Catherine said, I am a third year in chemical engineering. The basis of chemical engineering is just designing and developing chemical processes that involve the production and manufacturing of products. So it appears across so many industries, including manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, food, environmental, microelectronics, energy, and many more.
Cool. So what are some of the classes that chemical engineers get to take at UC?
So a lot of the major specific courses for chemies center on fluid dynamics, computer science, equipment design. This can include material and energy balances, transport, thermodynamics, and then our senior year is kind of more of a process design course that we take. And then, of course, as a chemie, you're going to have to take 2 terms of physics and organic chemistry, and then along with your gen ed classes as an engineer your first couple years.
So what are some of the co-ops that you can do as a chemical engineer? And since you're a third year student, what are some of the co-ops that you've already done?
So I am currently completing my second co-op term at Nice, which is a performance chemical company that's just outside of Cincinnati. At this co-op specifically, I'm working primarily with our project and process engineer on projects at the plant. But since it is a smaller company, I also work with our health, safety, and environmental department as well as lab technicians. So while my co-op right now is specifically in the chemical manufacturing industry, chemie co-op opportunities can appear across multiple industries. So some companies for chemies will be in the pharmaceutical industry or food, oil and gas, energy industries. I know some of the popular chemie co-ops at UC have been working with BASF Corporation, Dow Chemical Company, Johnson & Johnson, Teva Pharmaceuticals, Procter & Gamble. There's really the possibilities for a chemie co-op are very wide and far.
What's some advice that you would give to students who are looking to major in chemical engineering at UC?
I would say if you are interested in chemical engineering, to make sure that you consider your own career goals and path you would like to take and do some research on what chemical engineering is just to make sure that they align. Because I know a lot of times people, I feel like, envision chemical engineers maybe inside a lab working with chemicals all day, which, don't get me wrong, can definitely be a place that this degree takes you. However, a typical chemical engineering role, think more of an industrial plant setting.
Because while the knowledge of chemistry and chemical reactions is important, chemical engineering involves you applying that knowledge when solving problems more focused on fluid mechanics and thermodynamics. And it's just more of a process and systems thinking than I think most people would typically think it would be. So if you have a passion for chemistry, but don't enjoy math or science or physics at all, then maybe exploring a degree in chemistry would be a better fit versus one in engineering and vice versa.
Okay, so my last question is, what's some advice that you would give your high school self?
I would say that the best advice I could give my high school self would probably be that you don't have to have everything about your life figured out in order to start it. There's no one in high school that has their life figured out to a T, even when it seems like they do. And I guess for that matter, there's no one in college that knows what's really going on either. So instead of trying to plan out everything meticulously and figure out your life path, just to pursue the things that excite you and take your time exploring interests, and then things will fall into place and click eventually.
Great. Thank you so much, Taylor.
All right, so that concludes our October podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope you picked up a few good tips to use. So as always, if you have any questions, feel free to send us an email, hit us up on Instagram, or leave a comment on the YouTube video. And be sure to stay tuned for our November podcast. We have some really cool stuff coming your way. Thanks, guys.